Welcome to the Key to the Conversation podcast, where we don't just have beautiful ideas, we have organized minds, right? This podcast is for the creatives, the visionaries, the leaders, and the dreamers who've got big, gigantic goals, but also real lives. The ones trying to figure out how to actually follow through and not just stay inspired. So, whether you're building a business, managing a team, navigating burnout, or maybe you're just trying to be more consistent with what matters to you, this space right here, right now, is for you. Thank you for listening. I am so glad to have you here. Let's get into today's episode. Today, we're breaking down something people ask me about all the time, especially if they're new to project management, starting something on their own, or just trying to get organized. That simple question is, Key, what tools should I be using? And honestly, valid question, because if you're scrolling on any socials that have opportunities to discuss project managing and productivity, or trying to learn from the outside looking in, it looks like you need a full tech stack just to track your simple to-do list that could be written in your notes app on your phone. Let me save you some time. You don't need 12 platforms to manage your workflow. What you do need is a toolbox that reflects how you think, how you plan, and how you move. Not the aesthetic version of productivity, the functional one. So today I'm walking you through what I believe every new project manager or anyone managing their own process actually needs in their toolbox. And don't worry, this is not sponsored content. This is based on what has actually helped me manage projects across creative teams, internal operations, marketing campaigns, retreats, films, you name it. And whether you're looking for your first PM role or already acting as a project manager, this one's for you, so let's get into it. Okay, so let's just get this out of the way because the internet will have you out here stressed and broke before you even start. You don't need Notion, ClickUp, Monday.com, Airtable, Asana, Trello, and Coda all at one time. You don't need the $89 Notion template. You don't need the automated Gantt chart. You don't need a 6-month plan that breaks your goals down to the hour if you haven't even figured out how you work yet. You need less options, not more. The options are actually a part of the reason why you can't find what works for you because you don't spend enough time with one thing to understand if it fits you or your natural rhythm of work. The thing is, when you're starting out, your focus should be on building rhythm, not building a digital masterpiece. And honestly, most people mistake aesthetics for effectiveness, which is also a really big issue. If your system looks gorgeous, but it overwhelms you so you never open it, it's not working for you. A lot of us get stuck in the setup spiral. You start setting things up, organizing tabs, color coding calendars, watching tutorials about any and everything, and you feel productive. But really, it's just a dressed up version of procrastination. It's what I like to call productivity cosplay. And I say that with love because I've been there too many times to even count. When I first stepped into project management, I thought being organized meant having the perfect platform. I was in the right position to do so. I was working at a small agency who had never had a project manager before. So I was brought on to essentially establish the process, right? So I tried everything. I switched tools every other week, hoping that the next one would finally make me feel in control of something at the company. Now, I will say that this gave me exposure to a lot of the tools that I'm familiar with now. So, okay, yes, it was a blessing in disguise. But the truth was, I didn't have a process problem. I had a focus problem. I wasn't clear on what mattered most to us as a business. So, no matter what tool I used, it just became another place to feel more and more behind. You can spend $200 on the fanciest software in in the world, but if you're not being honest about what you're avoiding, the tool is just a distraction. What most new PMs need isn't a stack of software, it's a full strategy, one that helps you make decisions, move through the fog, and get real about where your time and energy are actually going. When you don't know something, the first thing you should be doing is asking questions. Get on your team and ask them why a project manager was brought on. This will give you an idea of what problems or gaps they may have found on their own, and it'll give you a start on where you can begin to fill in those gaps. Ask about previous projects and what they felt could have been better. This will give you an idea of how things were run previously and the types of projects they tend to work with, whether that be waterfall, agile, or hybrid. Ask in-depth questions about everything: the approval processes, the teams that your team tends to work with regularly, leadership-driven projects versus general business goal projects. There's a different experience of being a project manager on a team and being a project manager on a team of project managers. Trust me, there are so many questions to ask that impact the process, and the process determines the necessary tools. So here's your permission to stop the scroll, stop chasing everyone else's workflow. You don't need to replicate what a $10,000 coaching program is doing. You need a system that meets you where you and your team are, one that helps you move through the day without a full-blown meltdown every day. This is not about doing less, it's about doing what works. So now that we've cleared out and released the pressure to be perfect, let's talk about what actually does belong in your starter toolkit. I want to walk you through 5 foundational pieces that I consider essential, not just for someone with the project manager title, but for anyone managing themselves, their ideas, or their work. And let me say this up front, these are just foundations. These are not the end-all be-all. Remember that it is never about copying mine or anybody else's exact system. It's about building one that fits how you think, plan, and recover when things get away from you. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, here's the first thing. You need a place to brain dump. You need a space where thoughts don't get lost. That might be a notebook. It could be your notes app in your phone. It might be a section in your work journal. Some teams love a good dry erase board in their conference room. Whatever it is, it has to be a space without any pressure to catch ideas, reminders, next steps before they get out of hand. Your brain is managing all the moving parts, so your brain dump needs to be the place where everything gets collected first. It's like an inbox catching all the incoming emails before everything gets sorted into its rightful place. The goal is to get it out of your head so you can actually prioritize. This next one is your weekly planning rhythm. And notice I didn't say a weekly planner. I said rhythm, i.e. a routine that you often return to. For me, that rhythm looks like mapping my week on Monday mornings and closing the loop to that every Friday. Some people plan Sunday nights, some people check in midweek, whatever works for you, but the point is that there has to be some type of pulse, a regular moment where you zoom out and say, what's the mission this week and what actually matters right now? My weekly work journal was built for this type of cadence in mind because most people don't need 50 priorities. They just need a good 3 to 5 goals to be able to hone in on. And don't overwhelm yourself. I promise you, everything is not a priority. It can't be. Everything may be a part of the goal, but some things just inevitably have to come after other tasks. On to number 3, a way to track what's moving. Now, this type of thing doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs to show you what's in motion, what's waiting, and what's complete. That's it. Whether that's a Trello board, sticky notes on a wall, or a section in your planner, you need a quick glance snapshot of your work. How it looks is more so just based on preference, and that is where people tend to get caught up on aesthetics. It's very important that this is based on how you work and not how it looks, because not everything can live inside your head. And when you're balancing multiple projects or just multiple parts of your life, you need to be able to look at something and know where things stand. When you find yourself falling back into the rhythm of trying to remember remember everything, it means your system isn't working for you, and you need to head to number 4, which is a reflection and recalibration system. See, most people skip this part because the system they chose just didn't work, and so they give up on it. Now, it's not always intentional, but we just have a homeostasis. So when things stop working for us, we revert back to what was comfortable, even if it wasn't the best option for us. So if you're not regularly asking yourself what worked, what didn't work, and what you learned from it all, you'll keep repeating the same frustrating cycles. And this is what my brag bank was actually created for. It's not just about logging accomplishments. It's about noticing patterns, identifying friction, learning how you actually get things done so you can stop self-sabotaging and start self-correcting. You can do this in about 10 minutes a week. Quick, sure, but those 10 minutes matter, and you'll thank yourself later for it. And you also need a communication log. This is not optional, especially if you're client facing, working across teams, or juggling tasks where information moves fast. You need a way to track conversations and decisions. Listen to me when I say this. You need to track everything. It's not a game at all. Businesses spend a lot of money on the projects that they choose to embark on. So if something goes wrong, you need to be able to track where it went wrong and fix it if it can be fixed. Or in rare instances, you may need to prove that you aren't the reason for the mistake. For an example, this past June, the car that was used for Beyonce's concert experienced a technical malfunction and she was suspended in the air. Now, I don't know the ins and outs, so this is for example purposes only, but let's say there was a checklist and sign off on there being no technical issues. Whoever last signed off has to answer to that technical issue. And let me be clear, on projects, you as the project manager will always be that person who has to answer to that because you're the keeper of the project and the people. So know this, not everything will be in your inbox. Not every message will get pinned in Slack. Having a lightweight system, even if it's just a Google Doc or a tab in your tracker, it helps you stay accountable and keeps the confusion low. You don't want to be digging through 3 platforms to remember who approved what. None of these tools are about making you look productive. They're about helping you stay on track with your goals, your time, and your sanity, if I'm being honest. So if you've been trying to get it together, but you feel like your system never quite fits, try starting with this. Not with someone else's setup, but with the foundation that's built around how you actually move. We're going to get deeper into how I use some of these tools in the next section, but for now, I want you to pause and ask yourself, do I have these 5 things in place? And if not, which one needs to come first? So now that we've talked about what doesn't work, let's talk about what does. It's one thing to list out what belongs in a project management toolbox. It's another thing to show you how those tools actually function in real time, especially when life is lifing and the plan needs to adjust. So let's walk through how each of those 5 tools show up in my own process. Okay, let's talk brain dumping. This is the non-negotiable. I keep a running brain dump in multiple places actually, and that's intentional. My advice is to have one across your digital tools, the usual iPad or computer or both if you have them, one on paper for when you're offline, and one in your phone for when you're on the go. Don't try to force structure at this stage. It's mainly for you to just get ideas and information out that comes to you at random times that you may not have time to fully strategize. Treat it like a scratch pad. So voice notes, quick thoughts, messy phrasing, the whole 9. Then once or twice a week, you revisit it all and move the real action items into your planner or your tracker. And this alone keeps me from spiraling, and it also allows some time to discern which ideas are worth expanding on and which ideas should just be moved to trash. So let's move on to what I like to view as the anchor. This is the weekly planning. And I have talked about this in multiple episodes. My rhythm is Mondays and Fridays. Monday mornings, I review the brain dump, cross-reference my current priorities with my overall goals, and map out my week. Friday afternoons, I check in on what got done, what didn't, what rolled over, and why. My weekly work journal is designed around this exact process. It doesn't assume you're operating at 100% every day. It gives you just enough structure to focus without overwhelming you for the week. And that's it for the weekly planning. Easy peasy. I don't count Saturdays and Sundays because I believe in work-life balance. I mean, I know we all may have a little that we may do on the weekends, but I don't teach on it because I don't encourage it. So on to number 3, the reset button, aka tracking what's moving. With tracking, I like to keep things simple because if I overcomplicate how it looks, it'll lower the motivation to follow it. So I use a super simple board with 3 categories: to do, in progress, and done. Most times that's in Trello for me. Sometimes I write it in my calendar, but the key is visibility. I need to see what's in motion at any given moment. When things feel overwhelming, I can usually trace it back to this board not being updated or me trying to track too much in my head again, and that's my signal to reset. Something that I want you to remember is that this step is subjective and solely up to you and how you function and work. So that could be on a calendar, a CRM tool of your choice, on your phone or your computer, but tailor it so that it's functional. That's the main point. Next, we're moving on to reflection and recalibration. This is your secret weapon. This step is less about looking back at a single week and more about stepping back far enough to evaluate the system itself. A lot of people rush to change tools, platforms, or plans because something feels off, but they're not asking the right questions. Language always matters to me. So typically people are asking, why didn't they finish everything, when they should be asking, is the setup even helping them focus in the first place? That's why you don't reflect just to pat yourself on the back, or on the contrary, beat yourself up. You reflect to catch patterns. Are things rolling over too often? Are you consistently overloading your brain dump without translating anything into real action? Something I used to run into a lot was tracking tasks, but still feeling disconnected from the bigger picture. That's where the recalibration comes in. Sometimes the system just needs a tweak. Other times we need a reset. But if we don't zoom out on a regular basis, especially in creative or entrepreneurial settings, we start optimizing for the wrong things, making the tracker prettier but not more useful. Also, this is not a one-size-fits-all. Consider that the pace of this reflection depends on your context. In a fast-moving corporate or agency setting, weekly might be necessary. In a freelance or personal work, it might need to happen monthly or after key milestones. The point is, give the system enough time to reveal its effectiveness before you pivot. The monthly tracker helps me do this without turning it into an existential crisis. I log wins, I log patterns, friction points, and then I step back to ask, is this still working for me, or have I outgrown this version of my workflow? That's reflection, not just a recap, but a redesign when it's necessary. And then there's communication tracking, your professional safety net. So I use a running doc, nothing fancy. Honestly, sometimes you have to get back to your roots and just use Excel or Google Sheets. I saw someone on socials the other day asking if Excel is necessary to learn to be a PM. Unfortunately, yes. And trust that it will save you more than once in your career. Every time I make a key decision, get a verbal approval, or sense that something could be misremembered later, I log it. Date, topic, who said what, especially in client work or collaborative projects. This has helped me to maintain trust, reduce confusion, and protect my name when things get questioned. If you don't do anything else in your profession, I don't care what profession it is, always document, always protect your name. I don't use these tools because I'm trying to be perfect. I use them because I've seen what happens when I don't. Things tend to slip through the cracks, and we don't want that ever, no matter what setting you work in. These are the systems that hold me up. So when I say project managers need a toolbox, I'm not talking about a metaphor. I'm talking about real life support that helps you lead, deliver, and recover when things go left. The biggest lie in productivity is that there's a perfect system out there, you just haven't found it yet. But most of the time, it's not about finding the perfect system, it's about building one that actually fits you. And that means being honest about your time, your patterns, and your responsibilities, not what's ideal and on your Pinterest board. If you're trying to manage everything in your head, you are setting yourself up to fail, honey. Not because you're lazy or that you lack discipline, but because your brain just wasn't designed to hold every to-do or every idea. So whether you're using my tools, whether you're building your own, or tweaking something that already exists, the goal is never perfection. The goal is always sustainability. If this episode made you realize there are gaps in your process, don't stress it, just start small. Pick one of the 5 areas: brain dump, planning, tracking, reflection, communication, and commit to showing up for that one thing this week. Test it, adjust it, and make it yours. Because the system is supposed to serve you, not the other way around. If you want a deeper breakdown of how I build systems that flex in real life, check out my latest blog post, How to Project Manage Yourself, A Beginner's Guide. Now up at keytotheconvo.com. That is KEETOTHECONVO.com. I'll also link a few of my favorite key method tools in the show notes if you want something simple, flexible, and actually functional to get started with. Thanks for spending time with me today, and remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's a little progress every day. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If it resonated with you, I'd love to keep the conversation going. So feel free to connect with me on socials. I am at Key to the Combo on Instagram and TikTok. And you can also find me on LinkedIn at Kivanya Webb Riley. All the links are in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will talk to you next time. Bye.